You're listening to the Broken Havoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. What's up, everybody? It is Broken Havoc here, right here on the Broken Havoc Podcast, here with the debut episode of my new weekly series, News Shock, where I discuss the latest wrestling news of the week regarding WWE and AEW. And I will say, there are a lot of news stories right now coming to us in the world of professional wrestling regarding Cody Rhodes being a free agent at the moment right now, currently working on a new deal. Mustafa Ali requesting his release from the WWE, and just a lot of crazy stuff going on. Jon Moxley, his return to the wrestling ring has been announced, I should say, and of course, a lot of other things. The Elimination Chamber pay-per-view being in Saudi Arabia. A lot of stories coming to us. I'm also going to be discussing ratings of this past week's television with Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, and Rampage. All that good stuff right here on the debut episode of News Shock, right here on the Broken Havoc Podcast. But before I get into all the news, make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for my future reviews. My Raw review is coming up right here on the Broken Havoc Podcast. I'm probably going to be uploading right after I upload this review, or I'm probably going to be uploading it tomorrow. Who knows? I plan to have my debut episode of Old School Showcase be tomorrow. My very first episode of Old School Showcase is going to be on ECW One Night Stand, one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. So be on the lookout for the debut episode of Old School Showcase as well right here on the channel. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the news right here. We're going to start off with Cody Rhodes. Yes, Cody Rhodes being a free agent. As you guys know, Cody Rhodes is the current TNT champion, beating Sammy Guevara at the AEW Rampage Holiday Bash Show. And I will say, it was a really good match. I really enjoyed the match. And as you guys know, he was originally scheduled to face Sammy Guevara at Battle of the Belts a couple of weeks ago. But unfortunately, due to a medical issue, he was unable to make it to the show. And we instead got an interim TNT Championship match with Dustin replacing Cody in the match, going up against Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara, of course, is the interim TNT champion, and we're definitely going to be seeing a unification match in the near future. But Cody Rhodes right now is currently a free agent. So Fightful reported on Monday that Cody Rhodes has his deal expired at the end of 2021, and he basically hasn't been working. He has been working without a deal ever since, and he is set to return this Wednesday, tomorrow night on Dynamite. And of course, he was not medically cleared and all that stuff. All right, first off, Cody Rhodes is currently a free agent right now, and I see a lot of people, just going crazy about, oh my God, he's going to be a surprise entrant at the Royal Rumble and all that stuff, considering the fact he is a free agent. I'm here to tell you right now that that is not the case at all. Cody Rhodes is not a free agent whatsoever. Why do I say this? The reason why I say, he is a free agent, my bad. He's not going to be appearing at the Royal Rumble at all. That's what I was supposed to say. If I messed up my words, my apologies. But Cody Rhodes is not going to be appearing at the Royal Rumble. He's not. The reason why I say that is because of the fact that, of course, WWE a couple of weeks ago on SmackDown announced that Mickie James, who is the current Impact Knockouts champion and successfully defeated Deonna Purrazzo at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view, she did successfully defend her Knockouts championship and is still the current Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion. But a lot of people are just speculating, oh my God, there's going to be a forbidden door with Impact Wrestling and AEW and all that stuff. I'm here to tell you right now, look, the whole thing with Mickie James is a one-off. It is a complete one-off thing. This is not a scenario in which, WWE is going to work with other promotions, in my opinion, at least. And with Cody Rhodes, he's one of these guys. Like, I do not believe that he's going to be at the Royal Rumble, nor should you. because of the fact that, number one, WWE and AEW are in complete competition, and I just do not see WWE and AEW working together. That's just my deal right there. And, with Fightful reporting that, he is a free agent, it did shock a lot of people because of the fact that, he is working without a contract. But it did state that he is currently working on a new contract, so he's definitely going to re-sign. But a lot of people have been creating this scenario, which I definitely do see happening. Cody Rhodes is in this position right now in which he is a babyface just being booed by the fans. Like he's in this, situation. He's basically in John Cena's position, if that makes any sense. And what I mean by that is Cody Rhodes right now is, he's the babyface, but the fans are just constantly rejecting him. He's not getting that mixed reaction that John Cena did back in like 2006 and 7. He is getting like 2012, like before WrestleMania 28 John Cena vibes, or maybe after WrestleMania 28 John Cena vibes. Like he is legit, like getting legitimate heat. And this is not a situation, and I've stated this previously on my Dynamite reviews. I've stated this previously that, AEW is not stupid when it comes to booking Cody Rhodes, because they know that he's constantly getting a negative reaction from the fan base and from the crowd at every AEW show whenever Cody Rhodes wrestles. They're definitely playing out the fact that, they're working us all. AEW completely is working everybody. So the fact that everybody's thinking that he's going to join the Royal Rumble, I mean, I definitely do see Cody thinking, letting people know, like, I think that's what's going on. Like, he's letting people know, oh yeah, I probably will be at the Royal Rumble, but let's be honest, he's not going to be at the Royal Rumble. He's working us all at this scenario. He is working us all in this scenario, and do not be excited and do not get your hopes up, because quite frankly, there's not going to be any Forbidden Door entrant regarding AEW in the near future. Which leads me, to my next story, that there's going to be no crossover to take place at the Royal Rumble. According to Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer, there will be no AEW involvement at the Royal Rumble, nor will former AEW and WWE World Champion Jon Moxley, aka Dean Ambrose, will be at the event. Basically justifies what I completely stated. This is not a scenario in which, WWE is finally opening the door with other promotions. Look, WWE at the end of the day is a publicly traded company. And I know them being a publicly traded company is not really the whole gist of everything. I'm just saying, WWE, when it comes to working with other promotions, they really do not give a damn. And by, at the end of the day, they will get their end of the bargain. They will constantly get their end of the bargain whatsoever. So, the guys like Jon Moxley, like as Dave Meltzer stated, Jon Moxley is not going to be at the show. He's just not going to be at the show whatsoever. Jon Moxley is completely, AEW. He's AEW, and he's under contract with AEW, and I just do not see him being at the Royal Rumble, nor do you shouldn't see AEW working with the WWE and having this whole Forbidden Door thing happening. Will there be a surprise entrant? Probably, but at the end of the day, I mean, like, everybody's making these assumptions that, we're probably going to see Chris Jericho. Now, Chris Jericho is somebody, I can see at the Royal Rumble, but to be quite honest with you, I mean, again, he's an AEW wrestler. Again, justifying this report, AEW, there's not going to be any AEW talent at the Royal Rumble. But Chris Jericho is definitely an exception because of the fact that, Chris Jericho, I mean, he did appear on the Broken Skull sessions with Stone Cold Steve Austin a couple months ago. And a lot of people were just blowing up, like on Twitter, like, oh my God, Forbidden Door this, Forbidden Door that. And he did talk about AEW on the Broken Skull sessions. If you guys haven't watched the Broken Skull sessions interview with Chris Jericho, I definitely recommend you guys to give it a watch, because Chris Jericho really talks a lot about AEW in that, podcast per se with Steve Austin. But again, besides at least, Chris Jericho, and that's just like I don't even want to, like, I'm just take this with a grain of salt. I'm just making assumptions here. And look, and I've stated earlier, there's going to be no AEW talent involved. Maybe Chris Jericho probably is going to be there because of the fact of the whole Broken Skull sessions thing, whatever. But let's be real, there's going to be no AEW talent at the Royal Rumble whatsoever. So everybody on Twitter, please do not, and I mean this per se, do not get your hopes up. I'm just saying that right here, right now. Here's one story that I really want to talk about. WWE shoots on the AEW women's street fight. So this was reported by the Toronto Star. on the Toronto Star, I should say. Probably somebody of WWE corporate was saying this, but everybody was just mocking them, and I was part of that. Everybody was just laughing their ass off when they heard WWE, talk about this. So WWE on the Toronto Star, we're talking about the women's street fight that happened between Anna Jay and Ty Conti going up against the Bunny and Penelope Ford, which I reviewed that show, by the way. And it's actually probably, I believe, my third highest viewed review, because it got like 130 something views, probably more than that. I think it's in the 150s right now. People say that it's not a lot, but to me it is a lot because of the fact that I have 35 subscribers on this particular channel. But, that was my third highest viewed video. And per se, I mean, that match was just freaking awesome. That episode of Rampage itself was really good. I believe Cody Rhodes also did defend the TNT Championship. I believe it was Ethan Page on that particular show, but we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about the street fight. Again, the street fight was amazing. And if you guys haven't checked out the street fight, go back and watch that street fight. It's amazing. But WWE was on the Toronto Star, and they were talking about, just AEW and just talking about how they're in completely two different businesses. I'm going to read you guys the exact statement that WWE stated. And this is via the Toronto Star, by the way. If you look at the gory self-mutilation that bloodied several women in the December 31st event on TNT, it quickly becomes clear that these are very different businesses. We had an edgier product in the Attitude Era, and in the 2022 world, we don't believe that this type of dangerous and brutal display is appealing to network partners, sponsors, venues, children, or the general public as a whole. That is the exact statement that WWE has stated. Everything that I just read right there, WWE has completely stated. Okay, what are my thoughts on this? I laughed my ass off reading this. And, I found out via Instagram when they stated this statement, because one of the people that I follow on Instagram posted this. This is extremely ridiculous, and this is really stupid. The reason why I say this is because of the fact that, look, number one, what is WWE, why are they talking shit on AEW's product? And, I know what a lot of people are probably going to say. Oh, but when AEW takes shots at WWE, you're constantly defending them and all that stuff. You want to know why that is the case? You want to know why a lot of other podcasters are defending AEW in this scenario? I'm going to tell you why right now. The reason why everybody's defending AEW when they do shots at them, when they take shots at them, is number one, it's fun. Number two, it's just them being cool. And number three, it is the cold, hard truth. Everything that AEW mocks WWE for is extremely true. I can name some of the things that, some of the shots that they would take, like, maybe on like BTE or something like that, where the Young Bucks were watching a match backstage and the Young Bucks had them, Matt Hardy just comes in and just turns them. It's like, no, it's not like this. You have to turn like this and, turn like that. Something like that. Shots like that. AEW takes shots at WWE for fun. And I'm the type of person that actually likes, each company taking shots at one another. But this is not a scenario in which WWE is taking shots on television. Now, if they took a shot on television, like, for example, like CM Punk Edge talking about, CM Punk on that Miz promo, I will say, I actually like the fact that he acknowledged that. But when it comes to situations like this, in which, WWE, this is definitely WWE corporate or one stooge or whatever talking about this shit, it angers the crap out of me. Why? It's because of the fact that the WWE has arguably the worst product in pro wrestling right now. And, if you watch Raw and SmackDown, and really Raw, and I mean, SmackDown is getting worse. I did rant a lot on my previous SmackDown review. If you guys haven't checked that out, go back on the channel and watch my SmackDown review. It's definitely a good watch. But again, when they're, ranting about, self-mutilation, it's not appealing to children and all that stuff. The funniest thing and the irony about that, the irony about that is the fact that WWE totally contradicts themselves in this statement. They completely contradict themselves. And this is not the first time that, they get like a corporate statement on AEW like this. If you guys know, Vince McMahon, like, I believe it was a couple months before AEW went on TNT back in 2019 on a media call. It was not a media call. It was investors call, he was talking about AEW and talked about how there were blood and guts and stuff, which led to AEW eventually trademarking blood and guts, and basically it became their own version of War Games, and it became a whole success, which sadly, I didn't attend it because it got canceled, but we saw it last year, and I loved the first Blood and Guts, and I'm definitely excited what they're going to do with Blood and Guts, but that led to AEW trademarking Blood and Guts, which was hilarious. It was basically a scenario in which AEW was like, bro, you said we're Blood and Guts? Fuck it. We're going to trademark it, and that's going to be a show for us. Because they know they're not stupid, because AEW right now is the hottest thing in pro wrestling right now. Another thing is back in the quote-unquote Wednesday Night Wars when they were going up against NXT. If you guys don't remember, on the first week, AEW did beat NXT. And, this is the first of many times that AEW beat NXT in the ratings. And, the only few times that NXT really beat AEW in the ratings was during those times where they would bring in main roster talent. But at the end of the day, that first week where AEW, I believe, hit like 1.4 million viewers on their debut on TNT, WWE put out a press release talking about, congratulating AEW, and they were saying, it's not a marathon, guys, it's a sprint. Well, that statement completely bit them in the ass, because NXT got destroyed in the ratings so bad that 2 years later they were forced to move off Wednesdays, and just, not forced, but they basically moved to Tuesdays. They basically, quote unquote, forfeited. But at the end of the day, having two wrestling shows head to head against each other and just forcing one person to just watch one show is just ridiculous, in my opinion. But another example of this, last year when AEW had Blood and Guts with the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle, which I thought was an amazing ass match. Granted, the ending was kind of, with Jericho falling, I didn't notice it until later on that, he fell on the pad. But I mean, of course he's going to fall on the pad, but it was barely visible, and they didn't really, cover that up to make it seem like he actually fell through. But it was still an awesome match. I really enjoyed the match. And WWE was talking about, the match with Blood and Guts, and they were saying they put the business back 20 to 30 years or some shit like that. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? First off, at least when it comes to AEW, they put out a good product. WWE should not talk shit like this. You know what I'm saying? WWE has tried everything to mess with AEW on a constant basis. And WWE is the company, even to this day, that they want to monopolize the industry. You guys don't remember, I got another story. You guys remember when they were in talks with New Japan last year? Now, granted, I'm not the biggest New Japan watcher. I don't watch a lot of New Japan. I don't know what's going on there right now. But currently, AEW is in a current working relationship with New Japan. And last year, Nick Khan apparently had a heavy working relationship with New Japan, and that caused a lot of outrage, which led to Tony Khan go upload something, not Tony Khan, but there was a video with Tony Schiavone interviewing Tony Khan and talking about how Nick Khan, wants to work with New Japan, but Tony himself brought a bunch of New Japan talent to AEW and stuff, and he's like, he's a con, like there's only one con in the wrestling business and all that shit. It was funny. But again, these types of statements are ridiculous. WWE shouldn't even be talking, because of the fact that, back in the Attitude Era, and they even mentioned this in the Attitude Era, like this whole statement right here, we had an edgier product in the Attitude Era, and in 2022 world, we don't believe that type of dangerous and brutal display is appealing to network partners, sponsors, venues, children, which is actually the key word because it's hilarious. Back in the Attitude Era, and I'm going to tell you this right now, back in the Attitude Era, they were going crazy, and I mean it, like, they were going extremely crazy with, like, just all the shit that they were doing. Bra and panties matches, you had Sable doing her thing, DX doing, the suck it stuff. There were news reports that you can go back and watch on YouTube that, have children literally talking about you being big fans of DX and all that shit. When I was little, I was a big, WWE fan. I became a fan in 2010, and I bought like DVDs and stuff watching the old stuff from like 2004, 5, and 6, and all that stuff. And there were a lot of bloody matches. Like the people, they mentioned the fact that back in the Attitude Era we did all that stuff, but they don't even mention the fact that they continued doing that type of stuff in the 2000s in the Ruthless Aggression Era. They continued to do Braun Penny's matches and all that stuff. They continued to, like, they didn't even have a lot of women, like actual women's wrestlers back in the day. And the fact that they're saying that, oh, it's not appealing to children. Bro, they have a whole tape library. If you go on Peacock, which I assume you, the viewer watching this video, are subscribed to Peacock, you go on Peacock and look at all the programming that they have. They promote the same, they're basically selling the same thing that AEW is technically selling in a way. If you look at the shit that's on Peacock, I mean, like, bro, you see all this bloody stuff and all that stuff. I mean, like, who are you guys to talk? Mankind, one person mentioned Undertaker throwing Mankind off the Hell in a Cell, King in the Ring 1998. Like, WWE making these statements is absolutely mind-boggling, and it's hilarious because it goes to show you how out of touch they are. They are extremely ignorant, and I feel like they are just sitting so comfortable where they are, getting billions of dollars from Fox, making millions of dollars on the TV deal with NBC Universal, making millions in Saudi Arabia, which a lot of people criticize them as well. So, with the fact that AEW is criticizing about a women's match that was extremely bloody is completely mind-boggling to me because it's full of shit. It is completely full of shit, and these people are just the absolute worst corporate bullshit company I've ever heard in my life. These guys are so stupid. These guys are putting out the worst show in wrestling right now. Like, if you guys watched Raw, look, yes, Raw last night was pure garbage. Like, really, Brock Lesnar wasn't on the show. We had the Usos come in and DQ finish at the main event last night. But, like, the entirety of the show is flat out boring, bruh. Like, the show sucked. So why are you guys talking about self-mutilation and stuff? I mean, didn't Braun Breaker, wasn't he bleeding in the match against Tommaso Ciampa like a couple of weeks ago on NXT when he won the NXT championship? So what are they talking about here? Dave Meltzer was talking about it, with Brian Alvarez, and, everything he said was absolutely true. They're selling a whole tape library. If you go back, everything, there's a lot of shit that they did that was like, that is now deemed not, acceptable in 2022. AEW doesn't, AEW doesn't do the same things that WWE did back in the Attitude Era. They got it all wrong. AEW, the reason why they got blood in wrestling, and blood should always be in wrestling. Let's be 100% real with everybody. Blood should always be in wrestling because it really brings the emotion and it just brings the whole story element. And it just makes everything feel more realistic when it comes to wrestling. But apparently with WWE, they're just saying, oh yeah, we're in complete, after this match that happened on TNT with the women and them just, getting blood all over the ring and all that stuff, it goes to show you we're in completely two different businesses. Again, this is the key thing you guys should get out of this video. The WWE does not deem themselves as a pro wrestling company, even though they call themselves sports entertainment and they say they're in completely different businesses. And this is not the first time they've stated this. We hear stories that Vince McMahon, when Ted Turner bought WCW back in 1988, that infamous story where Ted Turner called Vince McMahon on the phone. And then Ted Turner was stating, guess what, Vince, I'm in the wrestling business. And then Vince McMahon was like, oh, we're in completely two different businesses. The WWE they're not in the wrestling business. They're in the sports entertainment business. But at the end of the day, they're still in the wrestling business. You want to know why? Because not a single fan calls themselves a sports entertainment fan. Not a single fan calls themselves a sports entertainment fan. If a wrestling fan, I wish I can just have a video. Like, I wish I could just go out and just find random wrestling fans, people that are just wrestling fans. And I'm like, do you call yourself a wrestling fan or a sports entertainment fan? And be like, I'm a wrestling fan. Who calls himself a sports entertainment fan? So yeah, the WWE's in quote unquote different businesses, but let's be 100% honest. The WWE is ashamed of the business that they're in. 100%. And this whole statement made by them is absolutely ridiculous. And it goes to show you the WWE's ignorance, and it's just flat out hilarious. But yeah, I'm gonna be. That's WWE shooting on the women's street fight. Mustafa Ali. This is actually another big story as well. Mustafa Ali requesting his release from the WWE. Mustafa Ali, actually one of the most underutilized he's actually one of the most talented, but at the same time, most underutilized talents in the WWE. And I've stated this, everybody has stated this, but like Mustafa Ali is completely underutilized. Like, this guy should be like right here, but he's all the way down here. Like, the WWE does not see anything in a guy like Ali, and Ali is extremely creative. He's one of the most creative minds in wrestling right now. But Mustafa Ali basically took to Twitter and basically stated that he's requesting his release from the WWE. Now, a Fightful report indicates that an argument with Vince McMahon regarding a pitch McMahon made to Ali regarding a direction for his character could have been the catalyst of Ali not being used. Then, of course, he shared a vignette on his Twitter back in November that was filmed, initially approved, but then ultimately rejected by the WWE. Now, with this story, he wanted to debut this new character, and I believe it was like this this USA character or this political character, something like that. And the WWE basically approved it, but then after that, they were like, no, we can't do stuff like this. Mustafa Ali, look, he went to Twitter and all that stuff, and he basically requested his release from the WWE. Now, what are my thoughts on this? First off, Ali is one of the most underutilized guys in the company. He's extremely underutilized, and the guy is just, the guy's extremely talented, and the guy can wrestle, man. If you watch many of his matches, like one match that comes off the top of my head, and I remember because this was such a good match. It was the match with Cedric Alexander, and this was on the kickoff of WrestleMania 34 a couple years ago. And Mustafa Ali, he wrestled a damn good match with Cedric Alexander. It was such a good-ass match, and I'm like, a lot of people were saying, why wasn't this match the opener of the show? Of course, later on, Mustafa Ali actually he was actually supposed to wrestle Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship, as you guys know, but unfortunately he got injured, and, he wasn't going to be wrestling at the Elimination Chamber, which dawned the birth of Kofi Mania. And then, of course, after that, Ali, the whole Retribution angle started to happen with the whole hacker thing. And then, Retribution. And I will say this. Retribution was a complete joke. Retribution was one of those storylines where I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. I knew from the moment it started, it was going to be a complete failure. The reason why I say Retribution was going to be a complete failure is because of the fact that, number one, I just have no faith in the WWE creatively when it comes to these scenarios. And number two, what we've seen later on with, them bringing in the other members like, Dominic Dijakovic as T-Bar, Dio Madden as Mace, or Mia Yim. I forgot who Mia Yim's name was, or, you got names like Slapjack. Like, you can tell this is coming from Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, when it comes to names, you can instantly tell that was a Vince McMahon decision. Braun Breaker, definitely a Vince McMahon decision. Von Wagner, definitely a Vince McMahon decision. A lot of these names, T-Bar, Vince McMahon decision. Mace, Vince McMahon decision. I'm just saying, when it came to Retribution, it was a complete failure. And then, of course, after that, they split Retribution up. And then earlier last year, they were teaming Mustafa Ali with Mansoor. And in the beginning, I was really questioning it. If you watch my previous Raw reviews, I was definitely questioning it. The reason why I say that is because of the fact that, first off, I hate those types of storylines where, the WWE has like a new wrestler, right? And then he's backstage and he's like asking for tips. That was basically what Mansoor was. And I'm like, wait, why the fuck are you having Mansoor asking for tips if he was a wrestler for like the past like 2 years in the WWE? Like he would wrestle at all the Saudi Arabia shows. So why is he coming in and just like asking for advice? I never understood those storylines. I've always hated those types of angles. But later on, when they had the tag team with Mansoor and Ali, I was actually growing accustomed to the tag team. And I'm like, maybe this thing can work, and maybe this thing can work. But of course, they split them up and all that stuff. And then Ali was off doing nothing. Now, apparently he wanted to take a day off, I believe it was. Crap, I don't have the report right here with me. But he wanted to get a day off. And what happened was that, when he requested that day off, Instead, WWE, granted him like a bunch of days off and doesn't even know if he's going to come back and stuff. Now, granted, I have the statement right here, and I did not state this earlier, so my apologies. This is my first time doing this type of video, but I have the message right here that Ali, that basically Ali put out. I have a message that is much bigger than my dreams in pro wrestling, said Ali on Twitter. Despite my best efforts, I will not be able to deliver this message while working for WWE. Therefore, I am requesting my release from WWE. So Ali requested his release from WWE. Of course, the Fightful report reported that Vince McMahon and Mustafa Ali had a heated argument backstage, and it was like really bad. All right, what can we bring out of this? Ali, will he get released? I definitely do see that happening. I feel like this is one of those situations where Ali is just extremely frustrated, and rightfully so, because of the fact that all of us fans know how talented Mustafa Ali is. We've just seen his work, and the guy's just awesome at what he does. He's a really good in-ring performer. His promo work is not bad either. I actually tend to enjoy his promo work. I will say some of his promos in previous episodes of Raw, they're definitely scripted. You don't listen, all that stuff. They're gonna screw you, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, Ali can be a good promo. Ali is really good at what he does. Ali is a really good in-ring performer. He's one of the best in-ring wrestlers in the WWE. And a lot of people were just wanting Ali to just be successful. But at the end of the day, WWE, or I should say Vince McMahon, doesn't really see anything in Ali, and that is the problem. Vince McMahon, when he wants to do something with you, he will then over time, like maybe like a week later, he'll just get bored of you, because Vince McMahon really, at the end of the day, is just he's completely out of touch. This is not the 80s anymore. This is not the 90s. This is not the 2000s anymore. Things are different now. And Ali, again, it sucks that, Ali never got the opportunity that he really deserved. Let's be honest. Ali deserved that opportunity. But he is requesting his release from the WWE. Will he get released? I definitely do believe yes. Basically, I'm making this assumption right now that, Ali is definitely, creating a snare in which, saying that I'm not going to be part of those next budget cut releases. Because, I guarantee you that Ali was definitely going to be part of those next budget cuts whenever they're going to be, because WWE has been doing a lot, and I mean a lot, of releases lately. But yeah, he requested his WWE release. I genuinely believe that he's definitely going to get granted his release. And where he will work, who knows? I mean, a lot of wrestlers, say, oh, he should go to AEW and all that stuff. And I'm going to tell you right now, I hope he does go to AEW, but at the same time, there's other areas right there. I mean, you can go to Impact. He can go to a lot of places, but at the end of the day, AEW cannot sign everybody. We still have Bray Wyatt. He's definitely going to AEW, 100%. I definitely do see, AEW picking up Bray Wyatt. But with Mustafa Ali, I think he's going to be a great get for them. But at the same time, I mean, you got to, Tony Khan really needs to be careful on who he signs, because at the end of the day, he cannot sign everybody. So people need to really get that in mind. But yeah, that was Mustafa Ali requesting his release. I am definitely, everybody's going to be supporting him wherever he goes, no matter what. Doesn't matter what company he goes, everybody's going to support him, period. Jon Moxley, his return is announced. Now, originally he is still going to return, but it was announced today on Twitter that AEW, Jon Moxley is going to be returning tomorrow night on Dynamite. But before that was even announced, a couple of days ago, it was announced that Jon Moxley is actually going to be making his wrestling return, going up against Homicide this Sunday at the GCW Hammerstein Ballroom show called The World on GCW, which is a show that I'm definitely going to watch. I'm definitely really interested in watching. I'm not going to review the show because, number one, I don't watch a lot of GCW. Like, I only watched a couple of GCW shows. Like, I watched the Homecoming Part 1 show, The Art of War Games, and I think a couple other shows. But I was really, the reason why I started watching GCW, especially when it came to the Homecoming show, I really wanted to see what they were going to do with Matt Cardona, because what Matt Cardona is doing recently in GCW is just really fucking interesting. I love what they're doing with Matt Cardona. It's just extremely awesome to watch. But this Saturday, I think it's this Sunday, right? This Sunday? Yeah, this Sunday, Yeah, Sunday, January 3rd. GCW has by far their biggest show, the World on GCW at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City, which, of course, the Hammerstein Ballroom is notorious for a lot of wrestling shows, or I should say underground wrestling shows, I should say, with ECW hosting a lot of their last few events, their last few pay-per-views and their last few shows in the Hammerstein Ballroom in late 2000 and early 2001. Their final pay-per-view, I believe it was Guilty as Charged 2001, held in the Hammerstein Ballroom, of course. Then they had the 2 one-night stand shows, which, by the way, again, a reminder, Old School Showcase will debut tomorrow with ECW One Night Stand 2006. I'm definitely excited to bring you guys that review. But Jon Moxley is the current GCW World Heavyweight Champion, and he will face Homicide at the show. Again, the show is going to be awesome. Everybody's hyped up for the show. We got Joey Janela versus Matt Cardona, which is a match I'm definitely excited to see. And also Homicide versus Jon Moxley. But I'm really excited, with Jon Moxley returning at the GCW show. And, of course, today, AEW announced that Jon Moxley will be wrestling. Not wrestling, but he's going to be making his return tomorrow night on AEW Dynamite. So, it was definitely expected. It was kind of weird, Again, AEW lets their wrestlers, work indie dates. But it was kind of weird, since, his first wrestling appearance back, after, going to, rehab and stuff. Was going to be a GCW, not really AEW, but, now we figured out that tomorrow night he's going to be making his return on Dynamite and is going to be wrestling at the GCW show. So that's great to see. I'm glad that Jon Moxley is back because, Jon Moxley was an integral part of AEW, and I've just been a huge fan of Jon Moxley's work. He was just amazing in AEW, and, I'm really excited to see what goes down in the near future. But yeah, the next story, Corey Graves is cleared for an in-ring return. Corey Graves, yes, the commentator for Raw, the color commentator, I should say, for Raw, Corey Graves, has announced that he is cleared to have an in-ring return. Fightful Select reported that Graves had major status shift over the last year regarding physical contact. According to the Fightful Select report, Graves was cleared by WWE doctors sometime around 2020, despite originally being an internal no-contact list that the company keeps. Graves is no longer on that list, and both Graves and WWE could not confirm or deny any part of Fightful's report. Graves was signed by the WWE as a wrestler and competed both in FCW, aka Florida Championship Wrestling, and NXT. And then in 2014, he suffered a concussion, and he was no longer cleared to compete and announced his retirement, shifting over to the color commentator position in NXT. And of course, a lot of people praised his work back in NXT. Again, during this time, I didn't watch a lot of NXT, but I heard a lot about Corey Graves. And I will say this, I was really excited when they first brought him into the Raw commentary team back in 2016 when they brought back the brand split. Because Corey Graves, from what I heard at the time, before he got called up from NXT, I heard a little bit of Corey Graves' commentary, and I'm like, bro, this guy's really good at what he does. But, he was a wrestler. I believe he was the NXT tag team champion. He was a former NXT tag team champion with Neville. If you guys don't know who Neville is, he's Pac in AEW. That's what his name was in the WWE. Originally it was Adrian Neville, but then when they, called him up to the main roster, they created this whole superhero gimmick for Neville, and basically, they just called him Neville. But yeah, Corey Graves is cleared for an in-ring return. Now, what are my thoughts on this? I really haven't seen a lot of Corey Graves' work back in, the NXT days because of the fact that I was never really the biggest NXT watcher back in the day. Even as far as 2014, I didn't watch a lot of NXT. Really, I was really introduced to NXT back in around 2015, when Kevin Owens was going crazy in there. Now, granted, I didn't watch the show weekly, and I didn't watch all their takeovers. But I heard about NXT, and, I heard a lot of the good things about NXT. But, of course, you go back on Peacock and you see the matches, of course, TakeOver Brooklyn with Sasha Banks and, Bayley in that match, in that amazing Iron Man match that they had. It was an awesome-ass match. But, Corey Graves is cleared to return. Good for him. I'm happy for him. Do I want to see him back in the ring? Maybe, yeah. Maybe, you never know. He wants to do stuff in the ring. At the end of the day, it's all his decision. But, I'm really excited, to see what goes down when it comes to Corey Graves. Do I see any, is he going to be an entrant at the Royal Rumble? Honestly, I do not know. But if he's actually going to return to the ring, I'm really gonna have to go back and watch a couple of Corey Graves matches because I really haven't seen any. Get mad at me, Marks. I'm sorry. I didn't watch a lot of NXT during this period of time. Okay. But I knew he was a wrestler, but I just didn't watch a lot of NXT. I'm most known with Corey. I really know Corey Graves more as the commentator, as the color commentator, but that's just me. All right. But yeah, Corey Graves is cleared to return, and let's go to our next report. The next report is WWE RAW is set to air on SyFy next month for the next 2 weeks. Now, WWE announced that they will be I don't want to say preempted, but they will be moving over to SyFy for 2 straight weeks. Raw and NXT. I think I should have put NXT right there because NXT is part of it. Now, granted, I don't watch NXT 2.0. I only watch NXT when I feel like there's an importance for NXT. For example, I watched NXT 2 weeks ago for the Ciampa and Braun Breaker match, which I thought was actually a really good match. But WWE NXT and WWE Raw are scheduled to be bumped from the USA Network to SyFy due to live coverage of the Winter Olympics. Of course, if USA Network has obligations regarding the Winter Olympics, 100%, of course, they're WWE and NXT, because they both are on USA Network, are going to be preempted, and they're going to be moving over to SyFy. This isn't the last time that WWE are on SyFy, by the way. I believe last year NXT had those Super Tuesday shows, which they aired on Tuesdays, and they also aired on SyFy. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they're going to be airing on SyFy. So here are the dates. So the February 7th and February 14th episodes of Raw will air on SyFy, according to PW Insider. That's where I'm getting the news source from. And February 8th and February 15th, those episodes of NXT, those 2 dates are going to be airing on SyFy from, of course, 8 p.m. to 10. So that's according to PW Insider. Okay, great. This isn't the first time that a wrestling show hasn't been this isn't the first time a wrestling show has been preempted. Of course, AEW, if you guys don't remember, back in June were preempted due to the NBA, and they were moved over to Fridays for a whole month. And of course, you had SmackDown, and then they aired after SmackDown, which I will say was kind of a hassle because you had 2 hours of wrestling on Friday from 8 to 10, and then you had 2 hours of wrestling from 10 through 12. So that was a real hassle for that. But I will say, they're going to be preempted. They're going to go back to the USA Network. That's that. Roman Reigns, according to the WWE, breaks Brock Lesnar's record for the longest reigning Universal Champion in company history. So Roman Reigns has reached over 500 days as the Universal Championship holder. Good for Roman Reigns. Is he going to be losing the Universal Championship? Do I think he is? My pure answer is absolutely no. I think the guy's going to hold the title for the rest of the year. And I definitely do not see Roman Reigns dropping the title next year, considering the fact that, we all know at WrestleMania, usually when it comes to WrestleMania, it's supposed to be, the blow off for a huge storyline / huge feud. And, WWE, let's be 100% honest, really hasn't found a babyface for Roman Reigns. They haven't had a true babyface for Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is basically Hollywood Hulk Hogan. WWE hasn't found their Sting. Where's your Sting? They ain't got one. They don't got one because at the end of the day, WWE refuses to make new stars. And of course, Roman Reigns is expected to face Brock Lesnar this year at WrestleMania. And next year, we know for a fact that, WWE is not going to rely on a young babyface because we know that The Rock is going to be wrestling Roman Reigns. It's obvious it's going to happen. It's imminent. That match is going to be happening next year because WrestleMania is going to be in Los Angeles next year. We all know that The Rock is definitely going to be wrestling Roman Reigns, period. But at the same time, WWE really hasn't found a babyface for Roman Reigns. WWE, make a new star. Find a babyface for Roman Reigns to dethrone him because I'm just saying, it's really going to bite you in the ass when, Roman Reigns, eventually, goes off to Hollywood and WWE has no stars. One of the beauties about AEW, one of the things I love about AEW is that, look, Omega was the world champion. He basically carried the company on his back throughout the majority of 2021. And throughout 2021, AEW is building a lot of young guys. Your Jungle Boys, your Sammy Guevaras, your MJFs. They're your pillars, your 4 pillars, right? And your Darby Allins, all those guys. And, of course, after Omega dropped the belt to Hangman at Full Gear, Omega took time off, and rightfully so, because, he had a lot of injuries and all that stuff. And, that did not harm AEW whatsoever. You want to know why? Because they have a whole main event scene lined up. Their entire main event scene, in my opinion, right now is extremely stacked. And their plans for the world title is definitely going really interesting. You got guys like MJF, who I do believe is the guy to beat Hangman Adam Page for the AEW Championship. I definitely do see that happening, possibly at a Double or Nothing. When it comes to the whole Lance Archer feud, I definitely do not see that happening at Revolution. I see it happening at Beach Break or something. I feel like the match that is going to be happening at Revolution is going to be Hangman versus Danielson in an Iron Man match. That's how I would book it. But again, MJF is the guy to beat Hangman. But Roman Reigns, WWE has no babyface for Roman Reigns. They can't make official new stars. WWE needs to book the young guys. Don't bring back veterans, please. All right. In our last story, before we go on to the ratings and then finish off this first episode of Old School Showcase, is WWE is bringing back the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view for Saudi Arabia. So yeah, they're bringing back the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. Okay, great. I'm going to be 100% honest here. I do not like the gimmicked pay-per-views, your Hell in a Cells, your Elimination Chambers. I mean, Royal Rumble is an exception. I mean, Royal Rumble has been an annual thing for forever. So that's an exception, of course. I mean, I don't even know why I'm putting it in the same discussion, because it's one of the big four. I don't even know why I'm putting that in a discussion. Shame on me for saying that. But WWE is set to debut have the Elimination Chamber set for Saudi Arabia on February 19th in Jeddah. So the company announced on Monday that the 2022 Elimination Chamber event will be held in Jeddah on Saturday, February 19th, and the press release stated that the show will take place at the world's largest pillarless Superdome. This year's Elimination Chamber will be the 7th pay-per-view event that WWE has held in Saudi Arabia. The first and only Greatest Royal Rumble was the first event in the country in April of 2018. WWE followed up with its Crown Jewel and Super Showdown events. So this is going to be the first time that the WWE is going to have the Elimination Chamber at Saudi Arabia. What are my thoughts? Fine. They have a whole 10-year contract with Saudi Arabia. I'm never the biggest fan of the Saudi Arabia shows, but I will say Crown Jewel, the last Crown Jewel was actually not a bad show, but the previous shows were just god awful. I just did not care whatsoever about those shows because of the fact that, they'd be bringing in guys like Goldberg for fucking matches and shit. You guys remember that match with The Undertaker and Goldberg where Goldberg botched that jackhammer? Yeah. Those matches, I always viewed the Saudi Arabia shows as glorified house shows, especially in those first few Saudi Arabia shows. I always viewed those shows as just glorified house shows, but now they're definitely making this as actual legit pay-per-views, and Elimination Chamber, of course, is going to be one of them. One thing I will say about the Elimination Chamber is the fact that the Elimination Chamber really, I really had no interest in the Elimination Chamber these past couple of years. Back in the day, the Elimination Chamber was one of the most barbaric matches ever. The Elimination Chamber is arguably my favorite match type, to be quite honest with you. The Elimination Chamber was always one of my favorite, if not my actual favorite match type. And really, WWE they really did not care a lot about the Elimination Chamber. The Elimination Chamber is a 100% joke now. I feel like the Elimination Chamber really, is just a flat out joke. I really do not care a lot about the Elimination Chamber. And really, there's really no interest regarding the Elimination Chamber every year nowadays. I always had that assumption, if WWE does not want to do War Games for Survivor Series, they should do War Games for Survivor Series. Instead of having it on NXT, do it at Survivor Series because it creates more interest. And if you guys do not want to do, War Games at Survivor Series, do the Elimination Chamber, do it tornado style in the Elimination Chamber. That's not bad. I would do that. But again, the Elimination Chamber has been diminished for the past, how many years now? It's not really. The last good Elimination Chamber match was back in 2016 where Bray Wyatt won the WWE title. And that pay-per-view itself was really good. SmackDown, SmackDown in late 2016, early 2017, bro, are honestly one of my favorite moments to be a wrestling fan. 2016 itself, the year as a whole, was one of my favorite years in wrestling. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I love 2016 wrestling. And SmackDown was amazing. You had the whole Kevin, on the Raw side, Raw kind of sucked in 2016, especially after the draft. But really the highlights during that time was like Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens, of course, the whole list of Jericho, one of my favorites. But yeah, WWE is planning to have the Elimination Chamber in Saudi Arabia. Okay, fine. Of course, they have a 10-year commitment with Saudi Arabia. Of course, they're not leaving Saudi Arabia anytime soon. All right. Now we're going to be going on to ratings. So the ratings I'm not going to go to ratings yet because I completely forgot one other story that I actually did not put on the layout, but it really ties in with the Elimination Chamber aspect. So Dave Meltzer stated on the Observer, on a previous Observer a couple days ago, that the WWE wanted to rename the Elimination Chamber. Yes, they wanted to rename the Elimination Chamber. So at one point, he basically stated that, originally they wanted to name it as the WrestleMania Chamber. Okay. So it says right here, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer has suggested that the company is about to rebrand the event as well. So he stated this, and I quote, WWE is looking at rebranding the Elimination Chamber the WrestleMania Chamber. Not official until it's announced. Okay, it's not official yet, but what are my thoughts on them possibly announcing the Elimination Chamber as the WrestleMania Chamber? My honest opinion, it sucks. Why are you changing the name? And this goes back to my whole argument of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why does WWE have to change things that are not broken? It makes absolutely no sense. You see that with wrestlers' theme songs. They changed Damian Priest's theme song. Why? Why would you change Damian Priest's theme song? It makes the absolute, it's just complete nonsense. So for them renaming it the WrestleMania Chamber, it's one of the stupidest name changes they could possibly come up with. Now, granted, as Dave Meltzer stated, it is still not official yet, but still, it is really dumb for them to call it the WrestleMania Chamber. Just keep it as the Elimination Chamber, for God's sakes, man. Just keep it as the Elimination. There's nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with the name. Please, if it ain't broke, do not fix it. All right, that's my little rant right there. All right, now we're going to finally go on to ratings. So here are the ratings for this past week when it comes to wrestling. I do not have NXT on here because, quite frankly, I just do not care about NXT. But I do have Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown, and Rampage. So, Raw drew an average of 1.633 million viewers on the USA Network. This is down 4.83% from last week's 1.7 million viewers from the first Raw of 2022. Of course, that was the aftermath of the Day 1 show, which I thought was kind of a lackluster show, to be quite honest with you. Raw drew a 1.6. Raw ratings have been falling down. It's a common thing. Back in 2000, man, like Raw would do like 6s and 7s and all that stuff. And if you combine those numbers with a Nitro, which like Nitro would do like 3s and 4s, oh my God, you got like 14 people, like 14, 13, 12 million people, 10 million people watching wrestling. But yeah, Raw went down this past week. I do not know about the Raw rating this week, so I got to look at that. Dynamite drew an average 969,000 viewers and drew a 0.39 rating in the 18 to 34 demographic. So this actually tied with Raw last week in the demo, in the 18 to 49 demo, which is actually crazy. Because Dynamite, for a few weeks last year, has been beating Raw in the 18 to 49 demographic. And that demographic is really important because of the fact that the 18 to 49 demographic is the main core audience for pro wrestling. But again, Dynamite drew 960,000 viewers. This was down last week from their 1.0 that they hit on their debut on TBS. They did 1 million viewers last week on TBS. I mean, I definitely did expect Dynamite's ratings to drop. I definitely expected them to drop. Dynamite drew 960,000 viewers. That is still good. Dynamite has been keeping TNT happy for years now. I mean, like, really, they're not going anywhere. So these assumptions that people are making about, Dynamite having low ratings than Raw, the reason why people defend AEW regarding their ratings and, not Raw is you got to keep this in mind. Raw has been on the air for over 25 years. Raw has been on the air since 1993, since January of 1993. Raw at the time used to do almost 10 million viewers a week back in the late 90s. Their ratings have dwindled. They would go down to fours. Like even 10 years ago, they would hit like 4 million viewers. Now they're in the ones. You know what I'm saying? I guarantee you, if they hit a lower rating, if they hit like 1.4 million viewers, they're right now. If the ratings keep going down for Raw, people need to keep this in mind. Raw is going to be doing the same numbers that TNA was doing in when they were on Spike TV. You know, Raw, like Impact, you know, back in like 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, which was their last year on Spike, you know, Impact would average like 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. You know, in today's standards, that's actually considered good. So you can make that argument. Now, granted, TNA was never competition to the WWE. I'm just making an argument. You know, if Impact was still on, like, you know, Paramount Network today, and they were doing the numbers that Raw were doing now, I mean, bro, that could have been an easily competition right there. But right now, Raw, their ratings are dwindling into, like, you know, TNA numbers right now. People don't realize TNA used to do 1 million viewers a week when they were on Spike. SmackDown averaged 2.06 million viewers, and they scored a 0.50 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic, and it was actually number one of the night. Rampage, on the other hand, drew 526,000 viewers, and they had a 0.20 in the 18 to 49 demographic. So, Rampage numbers, I mean, number one, people need to keep this in mind, and, you know, I always state this, you know, Rampage needs to move nights, to be quite honest with you. I don't know why Rampage airs after SmackDown, and Tony Khan said it best. I do not want to compete with SmackDown because, I mean, even if, you know, a random Dynamite episode went up against SmackDown, I mean, like, SmackDown is on Fox. You know, you can't really beat their ratings. Like, Fox is arguably, out of all these four networks that is shown right here, Fox is the largest network, bar none. But, you know, again, Rampage airs at 10 o'clock, and 10 o'clock is not a good time slot, to be quite honest with you. Rampage should move nights. I definitely do see them moving nights. Maybe to a Saturday night primetime, something. Who never knows? Maybe I see them moving to a Saturday night at, like, you know, 8 o'clock for 1 hour. That's just me. And that show needs to be live as well, because the element of Rampage being a taped show, you know, you get spoilers easily, and it gives people a reason not to watch the show. Rampage is not a bad show, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there are spoilers out there. There's some weeks that Rampage is live, but still the ratings are still not good. You know, 526,000 viewers is not good, ladies and gentlemen. But Rampage is a good show. I actually really enjoy Rampage, but let's be straight up, you know, it's just, you know, the Rampage ratings are not really that good. But Rampage is definitely moving nights. That's my thing. Rampage is a good show, and I definitely do see them moving nights, maybe on a Saturday. But yeah, that was the ratings for wrestling last week. Overall, you know, the ratings, you know, they dwindled. They went down. You know, Raw, their ratings are always bad. Again, I make the argument all the time. You know, the reason why I defend AEW so much and not WWE is because of the fact that Raw has been on the air for over 25 years, and Dynamite is a new product, and it's really impressive for them to reach at least 1 million viewers, and they did that last week 2 weeks ago on their TBS debut. But yeah, that was the debut episode of News Shock. So these were a lot of crazy news reports, you know, a lot of rants on this very first episode, but, you know, this is something that I really want to do. I know I really wasn't perfect on this first episode. That is something I'm continuing to work on, but hopefully in the next couple weeks I get better at this, because this is something I really want to do, and this is, you know, when it comes to these news stories, I really want to discuss many of these topics in front of all of you. So yeah, this was the first episode of News Shock. Be on the lookout tomorrow. Tomorrow I will have the debut episode of Old School Showcase, with the very first episode with me talking about ECW One Night Stand 2006. Overall, it's arguably one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. So yeah, be on the lookout for Old School Showcase. The same as my Raw review. I will try to upload my Raw review at least today, right after this video. Or if not, I will upload it on the same day that I will Old School Showcase episode 1. So be on the lookout for those videos. But yeah, please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for more of my videos right here on the Broken Havoc Podcast. But this was New Shock, and this is Broken Havoc from the Broken Havoc Podcast, signing out.